So you're a tenured professor and you've been invited to give a talk at a conference by your buddies, and it's probably a little bit of a junket, but it doesn't matter because at some point you're going to have to give a talk anyway. This is the perfect tenured professor talk you could give. Alright, the first thing you need to know about is that despite receiving many emails over many weeks about how you need to upload your presentation to the presentation deck before you even start presenting, you ignore that because you're more important than that. So you got to go and take your laptop with all the dangly things at the back, and you got to say, well, can I just connect this? And then everyone in the auditorium has got to watch you and wait while you kind of try to work out how to connect your laptop, which you proudly say is a MacBook. Well, actually, this is a MacBook, so it connects a little bit differently. And everyone has to sit there and wait while you fumble around for at least 5 minutes. That's how you show you are top dog and that you are in control of the room. The second thing you need to do, once you've got all your tech stuff sorted, is you need to proudly refuse the microphone. No matter the size of the auditorium, you need to say, I don't need that microphone, because you have got a boomy voice. So you shout out, can you hear me in the back? Because you need to prove to yourself that you don't need a microphone. A microphone is for undergraduates, research assistants, even postdocs, but not you. So you go, can you hear me at the back? And everyone goes, yes, because you shouted. But then
you go back to your normal talking voice and
no one at the back can hear you. That shows that you are the most expert presenter around. So then we've got the moment of truth where people see your first slide and the first thing you hit them in the face with is this. Slide 1 of 135. This fills the audience with dread. Oh my god, how is he going to get through 135 slides? This talk only goes for 45 minutes. That is where, as a tenured professor, you get to show that you are in control of the room and that you are so important that you actually only have one presentation you've been adding to for many years. And this is just the culmination of your life's work. You don't need different presentations for different events. You just have one presentation which you bumble your way through for the entire 45 minutes by using some expert tips that we'll talk about in a minute. As a tenured professor, the one thing you've got to show is that you are better than everyone else in the audience immediately. The way you do that is you show that you've got loads of papers in high impact factor journals. If you don't have these, don't worry, just choose your most impactful and make sure you put the cover art up there, because you definitely have cover art because your postdoc learned how to use Photoshop when you were off on a sabbatical in France. So don't worry about it. They have made this and it makes you look good. So make sure you put up all your papers in order of prestigiousness so the audience knows that they have no chance of becoming you because you are so amazing. And then it begins. You start working your way through the slides. What about this one? What about this one? And each individual slide is actually someone's entire PhD. But you have been around in academia for so long that you can just blurt it up in a single slide. And you can go through them and say, well, so-and-so did this. And you only mention their name if you're really nice. If you're just a standard tenured professor, you don't even need to mention them because you're going to give them 30 seconds of your time at the end just to say thanks. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then you go like this. Here's another one. Someone's entire PhD on a slide, but you only give it like a minute, if that, of talking time. Now, the one thing about these presentations as a tenured professor is you need to spend a lot of time on the first probably 4 or 5 slides, despite the fact you've had an entire career to try to work out how to time a presentation properly. You've got to make sure that you spend most of your time talking about the first 4 or 5 slides, and you need to boast as much as possible as you're talking about them. Talk about the times when you sort of like rubbed shoulders with Nobel laureates. That time that you were with the Vice Chancellor and they told you you were the best thing since sliced bread and that made your night. But you need to make sure that the first 3 or 4 slides are very pedantically talked about and you give every bit of information that makes you look as awesome as possible to the 200 people or so sat in the crowd. Next, you need to make sure that you make no attempt at making these slides legible. You need to make sure, as a tenured professor, that you just copy and paste directly from the papers that you're talking about that represent an entire PhD student's PhD that they spent so much time toiling over, crying over. They had you shout at them for hours on end But this slide, don't worry about it, just copy and paste straight from the paper and make sure that this is small text so that the audience can't really read it. You're not going to talk about it anyway, you're just going to go off the top of the dome because that's what you do. You're a loose cannon in the academic world and no one can stop your genius. Next slide, spend at least 10 minutes on this slide of your 45-minute presentation, even though it really doesn't add much to the overall story. What you're trying to do is make sure people get an idea and a sense that you are so much better than them that they can never ever even consider catching up with you as an academic. So why even try? They're just there because you are so important and you have been invited to show these people how important you are. Easy, really. That's what conferences are all about. Now, there's a moment in the presentation, probably about 35 minutes in of a 45-minute presentation, where you need to let the audience know that you're so clever and produce so many results that you have to rush through it because there's just no time to talk about all of the results, all of the most important results that you've ever produced, and you do it like this. Or I'm just going to flick through these slides. These slides don't really matter to anyone. So we'll just go through this. Where are we now? So yeah, look, this doesn't really matter. Oh, I haven't finished that slide. But don't worry, we'll just go to the end slides now. There's something that I really want to talk about. But nonetheless, yeah, don't worry about that. We'll get there in a moment. And that's it, really. So you do that for about 2 minutes, and that just sort of flashes slides in people's faces. And they're just, taken aback. You would give any PhD student absolute hell for presenting like that, but you are above that. You're a tenured professor. You've got nothing to prove to no one, so just do what you do, mate, innit? Now, this presentation represents all of the sadness that you've inflicted on every PhD student, every master's student, every postdoc, every research assistant that has worked in your pyramid system. So, you need to give them some time. But because you talk too much on the first 5 slides, all you have to do is flash their names up like this, thanks to my group, and then make sure that you've got some collaborators that are actually really well known from high level institutions that you want people to know that you rub shoulders with. That's the best way to use this slide. And if you want to, you can include some headshots of them that you took for your lab website that hasn't been updated for about 25 years. Nonetheless, you've got the headshots, you can plonk them in here because why not? And also, you've got to do the obligatory happy group shot, just to show that you're human, that you do have empathy, even though you're probably a little bit of a narcissist and you've never really thought about anyone else other than yourself for the last 30 years. Anyway, put this slide up and then people will go, oh, he's a good person. He's talked about all the people's lives he's destroyed over the years. There we are. That's how you do it. Nice. If you want to make sure that you don't present like a tenured professor, and I highly recommend that, go check out this video where I talk about how to create better presentations. I think you'll love it.